Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
We'll showcase the important partnership between corn and cattle and how beef producers and corn growers are working closely together to ensure the long-term success of both of these agricultural enterprises.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kate Maher. Corn is a critical part of the diet for most beef animals, and as a result, there is a close relationship between corn growers and cattle producers. In fact, many people around the country make a living growing corn and also raising cattle. Today, we're going to dig into the vital relationship between corn and cattle and discuss some of the common challenges and opportunities facing both industries. Here to talk more about this partnership is Matt Frostick, a corn and beef farmer from Michigan who also serves as a member of the Corn Board of the National Corn Growers Association. Matt, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you being here. Talk a little bit about the really deep connection between corn and beef and the value that they serve each other.
So beef is one of our number one consumers of corn, not only whole kernel, but also the dry distillers. So it's a pretty important component when you think about the corn grind that we have to have in our industry, not only to grind that corn as a whole, but also when we talk about producing the energy components with corn in the liquid fuels market, we have that byproduct of dry distillers that the livestock industry consumes, and it's very important to our industry, really.
Yeah, and it really obviously helps out those that are feeding cattle and using that on their cattle as well. So there's obviously nutritional benefits, of course, to feeding cattle corn and those byproducts you mentioned. Maybe talk a little bit about what other benefits feeding corn to cattle brings in terms of performance and quality. So
corn brings a huge aspect of marbling quality to the carcasses, and also the dry distillers is an important component to that carcass quality. On our farm with our rations, that's we've noticed that using those two components have really improved carcass quality through our feed sources and stuff.
You know, grain-fed, corn-fed beef, there's just no comparison for that. And there's a lot of people that want that product both here and overseas. How does the partnership maybe between the two associations really help drive demand for both corn and that great corn-fed beef?
So in our minds, we want a strong domestic industry, and it can't happen without beef. We're always trying to move corn overseas by the bushel, but more importantly, if we can move it through a value-added product, we're producing jobs locally or within our country that helps everyone. So, and more importantly, when you can add value to a product, you look at, a bushel of corn is a bushel of corn, but when you can put it into a carcass and add value to it, then you differentiate yourself from the others.
Yeah, and it's so great to create that product. Creating growing both corn and beef requires a lot of work and a lot of resources, and sustainability, of course, is top of mind for both industries. Maybe talk a little bit about the partnership between the two and how both industries really benefit each other in raising their sustainability.
Sure. So that's one of the big things. We sometimes we shy away from that sustainability word as in agriculture, and we really need to look at a lot of the things that are important to that component we already do. The U.S. has such a natural industry or ability to produce beef, sustainable beef. You have the ranges on the west side, and the hills on the east side where we can raise cattle on grass. And then we have corn in the middle where we can finish them, and it's such a natural progression where we can take a calf to market. And use corn in the middle to finish that steer. So,
Matt, that's a great point about using that great corn product in the middle of the country to bring those cattle in there to be fed and do so in a really efficient way. It also creates such a great quality product that really has a lot of demand in overseas on a global scale. Maybe talk about the importance of the partnership in creating that export opportunity in those export markets.
So as a corn grower, we're always trying to add value to our product, and beef is one of the best ways we can do that. And as the world demands more protein and higher value quality protein, we found that beef is one of those options that we're very competitive with. And not only competitive from a flavor and a taste standpoint, but also from a value standpoint of how we can produce it sustainably and affordably to this world market.
Yeah, our export consumers and export folks that buy our beef overseas have really got to appreciate what our producers here do so well to provide them that product. Thank you for your time here today. Thank you for the partnership, because I know it really drives a lot of value for both members of the Beef Association and the Corn Growers Association. We really appreciate all your work.
We appreciate it too. Thank you.
The National Corn Growers Association represents nearly 40,000 due-paying corn farmers nationwide, and the interest of more than 300,000 growers who contribute through corn checkoff programs in their states. To learn more about how they are building future markets for corn, visit the website ncga.com. One way that the National Corn Growers Association works to move the industry forward is through its annual Corn Yield Challenge. Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Brian Baxter has a look at this longtime event.
Corn farmers measure success in a variety of ways, but many define it by whether they reach their bushels per acre goal at the end of the season. Some like to further test their production skills by competing in the National Corn Yield Contest, which has been challenging growers annually since 1965.
When the Corn Yield Contest started, we had 20 entries from 4 states. This year, we had over 6,500 entries from 46 states, and the high yield was 394 bushels an acre. Our state winners are typically about 40% higher than the national yield average put out by the USDA. Our national winners are typically about 65% higher than the national US average. And so it is what they can do on 10 acres of ground, not in the whole field. So they play around with the rates, the timing, different products. So if that is profitable for them and successful, they can implement that across the whole acreage of their farm.
The National Corn Yield Contest is one of our longest, oldest, and most valuable programs at NCGA. We also love how it allows folks to try new things in small areas. And so the Corn Yield Contest is literally where the best producers in the U.S. try new things to become even better.
Farmers can compete in 10 different production classes based on their growing practices to see who can achieve the highest corn yields.
The corn contest is a way to showcase the farmers, the hard work they do, its pride in what they do to grow that top yield. And then some people will think, well, oh, it's just this one area. No, we have different regions. There's multitude of classes. So there's a lot of chances for guys to showcase themselves.
It gives them an opportunity to challenge themselves. Plus, it's a great way to be in a competition. Not only compete against themselves, but compete against their neighbor. Because who doesn't like a good game?
So my dad started entering in the early 90s. So it's kind of fun to get these contest fields. We always try something new each year on these, just depending on what we see that looks maybe will be the next big thing or something. So we'll try that on the first contest field, and then we'll adopt it to the rest of the farm.
I've been entering the Corn Yield Contest since 2015. I'd say the biggest value that I get out of the corn contest is meeting a lot of people, friends that I would have never met prior to them, and learning new things, optimizing yield.
This is my second year in the contest. It just gives me something to strive for and try to make myself better. I've met a lot of friends through this corn competition, and we get to talk and share ideas, and it helps me on our farm, and I think what we share together helps them.
In 2023, NCGA added an additional feature to the contest, a new class focused on nitrogen management.
For almost 60 years of the contest, it's really been the basic same premise. Grow as many bushels as you can per acre and do it however you want to do that. For 2023, we're introducing a pilot class where we're actually going to limit the amount of nitrogen growers can use. It's one new challenge, one new way to see what we can do and push those yields with that limitation.
So when you have the limit of the 180 pounds of nitrogen, but we are not limiting it on how it and when it is applied, you may have somebody that applies it all at one time. You may have somebody that split applicates it during the year to see if that helps them grow the best crop they can.
Each year, the state and national winners of the contest are honored at a special reception at Commodity Classic and also at NCGA's trade show booth.
The intention is for them to feel welcome and feel proud of the year that they had. We wanted the graphics to be larger than life, and people have connected with them.
Our biggest goal when we put together our booth each year is we want our members, when they leave our booth, to be proud to be an NCGA member. And we hope that both our winners and our general members, when they're here this week, when they walk in this space, that they're proud to be a corn grower, that they're proud to be a part of our organization.
Corteva, through its flagship seed brand, Pioneer, was once again a sponsor of the Corn Yield Contest.
The Pioneer brand is 97 years young at this point, and we really built around improving productivity for the farmer. So that's still our mission today, enriching the lives of those who produce and consume. And when you look at this yield contest, it matches that vision very well.
The National Corn Yield Contest challenges growers to explore new management ideas and production techniques, while also gaining valuable knowledge that can enhance their future yield potential.
I think the yield contest is critically important to the industry because it really puts the farmers in a position to learn themselves how they can increase yield on the farms and then share what they learn with other farmers.
So a grower with like tillage practices and weather events in similar areas can utilize that information, see if they can implement it at their own farm so that they can benefit from what their neighbors are doing.
What it does is show the capability of that corn plant can produce. You know, back when I first started going, back in Minnesota, if we could produce 100 bushel acre corn, we thought we were doing great. Now, these new genetics that they have in that plant, it just shows you the on potential limit where we can go with that crop of corn. And that's what we're going to need, more bushels to feed the world.
Reporting from Commodity Classic in Orlando, Florida, I'm Brian Baxter for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Still to come on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we're going to look back at some of our favorite segments from past shows about the relationship between corn and beef, including a great discussion about the sustainability of both industries. Don't go away, we'll have more right after this.
CattleCon 24 is marching onward to Orlando, January 31st to February 2nd, 2024. Have your say in the future of the industry, network with fellow producers, or connect with friendly faces. Plus, the NCBA trade show will be on site with over 385,000 square feet of the latest and greatest in the cattle business to help your operation stay competitive and sustainable. Learn more at convention.ncba.org.
By installing Ritchie waterers, you save water while keeping it fresh and always available to your animals. You protect the land by keeping natural water clean and soil healthy. And you conserve power because they're energy efficient. We're committed to helping you create a prosperous, sustainable, and regenerative future because we know, like you know, that every saved drop matters. Ritchie, fresh water for life.
Are you concerned about the impact government policies could have on your cattle business? One way to make your voice heard in Washington is by joining NCBA. When you join, you'll be part of the nation's oldest and largest national cattle industry organization that has a professional team working in Washington, D.C. on issues that matter to cattle-producing families nationwide. Don't stay on the sidelines. Make your voice heard by joining NCBA today at the website ncba.org.
Over the past several years, we've hosted a lot of great discussions on our show about the relationship between the corn and beef industries. Here's a look at one from Nebraska where we talked about the sustainability efforts of both industries.
We're continuing our discussion about the relationship between growing corn and producing beef. We've got a set of new guests joining us now, and I'm excited to introduce them to you. First is Brandon Honeycutt. He's a Nebraska farmer who also serves on the board of the National Corn Growers Association. We're also joined by Cassie Ahern, project manager of the Ecosystem Services Market Consortium. Alongside Cassie is Jared Drennan, who manages Drennan Feedlots, our host for today's program. You know, we hear a lot about soil health these days, and I'm curious from a corn producer's standpoint, what have corn growers done to improve soil health?
You know, when you look back at the last 20 or 30 years, you know, there's been a lot of changes in technology, whether we look at GMOs or whether we look at equipment technology that has allowed us to produce more with less, you know, using less water, using less fertilizer, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions over the years. That we just begin to see what we can do in the future and really how we can maximize our yield potential and minimize soil health destruction and really improve the soil around us.
And Jared, beef cattle producers can actually play a role in helping corn farmers improve soil health, is that right?
Yeah, you know, we can supply manure as fertilizer, which adds a lot of organic matter and humus to the soil and makes the soil tilth better. And it's a lot of micronutrients that come from the manure that really help out the crops.
So what are the tools available that producers have to really assess and help measure soil health?
You know, as we've looked over time, you know, as we mentioned technology, we're beginning to understand just how we can measure things. You know, there's soil tests out there to be able to figure out what's going on, even more so than what we used to do, just measuring NP and K, you know, just the basics of what we need. And now let's really dig into what's going on out there. Then as you see partnerships with different groups out there, that National Corn has been very, very vital in helping get going. And also we're very glad to be partners in, whether it's groups like Soil Health Partnership, Field to Market, or even more recently, more importantly as well, ESMC.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about your organization, if you wouldn't, Cassie.
Yeah, so ESMC is a consortium of members made up of potential buyers, but as well as commodity groups and producer associations to really bring buyers and sellers, so farmers and ranchers, to the table to sell ecosystem services, which we'll explain in a little bit. But you know, when you talk about tools and resources for producers, for farmers and ranchers, ESMC builds upon those tools and resources to advance conservation efforts and incentivizes producers to utilize more of those tools and advance, you know, and improve soil health on their operations.
So we were talking about sustainability in the last segment, and I'm curious, what's your take on how soil health impacts the whole sustainability of any operation? Jared?
Well, from like the feed yard standpoint, where we farm also, you can supply the fertilizer to go on your fields that you don't have to go buy synthetic fertilizer. And it's convenient for us because we can get it cleaned out of the pen and we have somewhere to go with it, and even neighbors buy it too, you know, which helps out everybody's kind of bottom line. The better the fertilizer, the better the crop, usually.
Would you have anything to add, Brandon?
You know, as we look at the soil health and we're looking at just the changes in the way we're planting the crop, right? You know, we're using things like no-till, we're using things like strip-till, cover crops, any of those things that will help improve soil tilth, you know, help with water infiltration, holding the fertilizer right where we want it. Because, you know, the last thing we want to do as a corn farmer is to lose a vital resource that we have, a fertilizer. You know, not just because it's costly if we don't have the ability to use manure, but also because, you know, we want to be good environmental stewards and make sure that we're not losing stuff, whether it's into groundwater here in Nebraska, which becomes a big deal, or into surface water, which we know can also be a big deal in other parts of the United States.
Just go ahead, Jared.
And on the cover crop deal, that goes really well with the feed yard also, because we can use that for grazing calves or weaning calves out on grass and make that, and you have more refuges and stuff like that. It
creates an opportunity, some real complementarity between corn and cattle.
Absolutely.
You know, we hear a lot these days about the term ecosystem services, and I'm curious, Cassie, can you give us a definition of what that term really means?
Yes, so simply put, ecosystem services are the benefits that society and people obtain from the ecosystems that we're surrounded by. Looking at that a little bit further, you know, the farmers and ranchers across the United States have really been developing ecosystem services and generating those for years and generations, but they probably wouldn't put that label on it. So when we talk about ecosystem services, we're looking at soil carbon and how much is sequestered in the ground, greenhouse gas emissions and how do we reduce those emissions, water quality impacts, water quantity impacts, and how do we conserve those. So that's, you know, in looking at biodiversity, that's another potential as well. So when we look at ecosystem services, that's really, you know, what we're referencing.
So Brandon, practically speaking, what does that term mean to you as a corn grower?
You know, when we hear the term ecosystem services, you know, a lot of times farmers think of that and they get a little glossy-eyed. You know, they hear carbon sequestration, they hear carbon credits, they hear all these things, and like, all right, what does that mean? Well, we realized at NCGA, well, let's take that back down a level to soil health. And so we developed a group called Soil Health Partnership. It's 200 farmers over 16 states. It's farmer to farmer. It's data driven. So we're really trying to develop the framework of what works in what situation. Where can we, the best places for cover crops? How do we get those things together? How do we really start developing the base work for what we need to do to get to that next level? And farmers in general will really grasp onto that, because we all want to be better stewards. We want to be able to figure out how we can implement these things into our own farming operations to get to that next level. And Soil Health Partnership is one of the key components of that.
So Cassie, tell us a little bit about your organization and the goals of your organization.
Yeah, so Ecosystem Services Market Consortium, or ESMC for short, because it's a mouthful. But our mission is to advance ecosystem services, to incentivize farmers and ranchers, to improve their soil health systems, which in the end benefit society overall. We're a nonprofit organization, and one of our guiding principles is to be producer-centric. So because of that, our ultimate goal is to provide as much value back to farmers and ranchers as possible.
So Jared, I'd ask you, I mean, in what ways can beef cattle producers benefit from this program?
Well, as a beef producer who also farms, we can benefit a lot by making the soil better with all the organic matter that the manure brings to it. And the better the soil, the more carbon it pulls down out of the atmosphere, and just makes for a better ecosystem in general, really.
And Brandon, what would you say from a corn producer's perspective?
You know, I think a lot of this is very exciting because we're looking at the next stage of what we've been trying to do. You know, as you just keep moving on through and say, okay, well, how can we benefit the farmers as a whole, whether it's corn guys or whether it's cattle guys? You know, what is that next stage of a market opportunity? And we're realizing that as we understand this, we can partner with people like ESMC, we'll be able to benefit not just from a revenue standpoint, but also from the environmental standpoint, and being able to understand, more importantly, what's going on in us and around us to benefit society as a whole.
I'm curious, you know, we talk in the beef and corn industry about freedom to operate, and when you think about the impacts and the interest that consumers and regulators have on this issue, I'm curious, how is that going to help us answer some of the questions that both of those stakeholder groups have about how we produce both corn and beef cattle? Cassie?
Yeah, so I would say I think we're all familiar with the fact that consumers are really interested in where their food comes from. So one of our goals at ESMC is to provide that transparency as to how producers are generating those ecosystem services that corporations and kind of regulatory agencies are interested in purchasing and kind of contributing to the climate mitigation and kind of overall impact.
One of the things we've seen over time is that as we partner with groups, you know, whether it's corn and cattle, whether it's corn and environmental groups, whether it's corn and ESMC, is that we have a better voice going into whatever we're going into, whether it's political offices, regulator offices, whatever that case is, and they allow us to present a message that, no, this is not just us looking at our own farming operation, how it benefits us, but how it benefits society, how it benefits the consumers, how it benefits the end users, and it's a great grouping that we can put together from an environmental standpoint to say, hey, this is where we're at.
You deal with some regulations here running a feed yard. How do you see this helping from either a consumer or regulatory standpoint?
Well, it all mainly boils down to transparency. You know, I mean, the more transparent you can be, the more likely your consumer is to buy your product because they trust it more. I mean, transparency has always been a big thing, and just in every industry, cattle, corn, anything, really.
That's a great point, and thank you all for your insights. If you'd like to learn more about the National Corn Growers Association and its efforts to drive demand for corn growers, just visit their website at ncga.com.
Still to come, we'll highlight some of the valuable environmental benefits that cattle can provide when they're on the land. Don't go away, we'll have more right after this.
There's never a dull moment for the Nelsons. Fifth-generation Montana ranchers. Since 1868, they've been herding cattle, reeling in trout, and exploring Paradise Valley from their backyard. Here's to another 150 years of adventure There's a story in every piece of land. Run with us on a John Deere Gator XUV and start telling yours.
This beef quality assurance tip is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
Hi, I'm Courtney Gray, the Director of Marketing and Industry Relations with the Pennsylvania Beef Council. A large portion of my job is on the farm with producers, helping them to obtain beef quality assurance certification. But another part of my job is working every day with consumers who have questions about the beef that they are purchasing in the grocery store. My tip for you today is to obtain your beef quality assurance certification. I understand that many of the tips that are in the beef quality assurance program might be things you've already implemented on your farm or ranch. The importance of the certification process helps us when we're talking with consumer audiences to show your commitment to basic things on your farm. Things like good animal husbandry, quality animal care, and ensuring that the beef that ends up in consumers' hands is of a high quality product. It's never been more important for us to have that story to tell. I hope this has encouraged you to want to obtain your beef quality assurance certification. You can find out more by visiting bqa.org, which will help you find the location for an in-person certification near you, or you can take the online modules and complete the certification from the comfort of your own home. BQA, the right way is the only way.
The Beef Quality Assurance Program is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
Welcome back to this special edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we look back at some of the past shows we've done on the relationship between corn and beef. We had a great panel discussion at the Certified Angus Beef headquarters on some of the things corn growers and cattle producers are doing to be more sustainable. Take a look.
And Don, I want to start by discussing the topic of upcycling. We've called the cow the Great American Upcycler. Talk about the impact upcycling has for both the cattle and corn industry.
Well, the key is the stomach of the cattle, right? I mean, it's very important that it is almost magical where it takes these wonderful corn products and converts them into a high quality, energy dense food for our consumers. So I think the key is that stomach that's taking all these kind of ingredients, putting them into the vat, if you will, and coming out with a very nutritious product.
And Brandon, does the upcycling capability of the cow play into the sustainability message for corn producers?
It does play into the message of sustainability. You know, at the very beginning, NCGA has a great working relationship with NCBA and also with the U.S. Meat Export Federation. And we realized that the sustainability message that consumers around the world want to hear starts right with corn. And we can translate that message into the sustainability message within the beef industry as well. And so that upcycling starts there and it plays great into the sustainability messaging.
And Ben, we haven't talked much about the ethanol industry, but how has the development of the ethanol industry impacted both corn growers as well as cattle producers?
Yeah, like you just touched on again on sustainability, and in my opinion, there's no better story of sustainability than corn, ethanol, and beef working together. You know, you take a bushel of corn over here and you take it to an ethanol plant and you grind it up, and when we talk corn, we talk food, fuel, and fiber. You know, you're taking that bushel of corn, you're taking it into fuel and ethanol production, and you're taking the fibrous and the byproduct of dried distillers grains, bringing it back home, feed it to my cattle, and then taking that cattle into the food source and put it into the public's eyes. So, you know, that's a great sustainability story, taking that one bushel and translating it all the way down the process line there. So.
And John, ethanol has derived a lot of value for the corn industry, hasn't it?
Well, it really has. You know, we have a lot of capacity in the ethanol to produce 50 million gallons annually, but we also can produce 44 million metric tons of DDGs. But there's another co-product, and everything about ethanol to me is a co-product, and it's the CO2, being able to use it in the livestock industry for processing and slaughtering. You know, we saw a little bit of that when we hit some bad weather in, was it 2019? Boy, it seems like we've had some rough years here, right? But there were some plants that shut down. Ethanol plants were surrounded by water, so they shut down. And so folks had to scramble to change their feed rations, but also those slaughtering facilities had to scramble to find CO2. So very symbiotic relationship, but it's a story of using all the product it's very sustainable. You know, it's just like the fed cattle. Is there 1% loss in the fed cattle? Probably not. Probably less than that.
I want to dive deeper into this discussion about how distillers' grains fits into the overall sustainability picture for both beef cattle producers and corn producers. And as two people who grow both beef cattle as well as corn, start with you, Ben. I mean, tell me a little bit about how your operation utilizes distillers' grains in improving the sustainability of your operation.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I come home from college, you know, we wanted to diversify a little more in order to make sure I was able to stay on the farm. And we kind of got more into, we started getting into some trucking of some dry distillers grains from some of the local ethanol plants here in the state of Ohio. And not only trucking them back for ourselves to feed in our livestock rations with our cattle, but, you know, we have pork and chicken is pretty big in our side of the state. So, you know, that kind of ramped up and that helped, you know, keep us sustainable as, you know, diversifying our business. So.
And Don, you all have both a seed stock operation as well as a cattle feeding operation. What role do distillers' grains play for you?
Well, the key to our feeding operation is the wise use of varying products of corn. You know, the key to our operation is we actually take dry corn, haul it to the ethanol plant, and in that very same truck, we bring back wet cake and actually have a nutrient boost in the translation. So it's a very positive thing for our corn use. The other thing, and it's kind of a little known fact, is the corn cob is one of the best fibers out there for rumen nutrition. And so we use a lot of earlage in that ration. So we're using corn in a variety of places.
Tell us more about the future, I guess, Ben, as you see it. Are there technologies or things coming down the pike that could actually improve the efficiency of feeding corn to cattle?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and another one I want to touch on, we're feeding a lot of corn silage as well. So we're feeding corn silage, corn distillers, and raw corn. So, you know, depending on how prices, you know, because, you know, things have changed, we've progressed over years, but one thing that doesn't change is the margins seem to be smaller and smaller at times. So, you know, if we can, you know, maybe we're going to add in some more corn silage and a little bit less raw corn, or add in some more distillers grain, depending on what price does. I think that really plays into, you know, making sure we're sustainable and, you know, price cost effective too, and keeping our operations, you know, heading forward. So.
And John, one last question to you. I mean, as you look at the future and the things that NCBA is researching and so forth, what do you see in terms of the future for the ethanol industry and for the utilization of distillers' grains in livestock feed?
As the ethanol industry has evolved, you know, we have got to see and visualize how there are different grades of DDGs. There's different methods for processing. You know, shelf life is critical with dry, but the wet has a definite advantage for direct feeding, but you have to get it there and feed it, right? So, you know, as we look at those DDGs, you know, we've been extracting oil, we extract CO2, we use it in slaughter, and as we've talked, but the opportunity in the DDGs to refine that feed value, you know, that protein string. So we may see a varied scale of products for different age of animals, different groups of animals, and all that's really becoming apparent and really going to be a real big part of the future for us. And so it's exciting to think about where we can go, and we probably haven't seen the end of it.
There's a lot more ahead on the relationship between corn and beef, including the impact that exports have on both industries. We'll have more on that topic when we return. Stay with us.
CattleCon 24 is marching onward to Orlando, January 31st to February 2nd, 2024. Have your say in the future of the industry, network with fellow producers, or connect with friendly faces. Plus, the NCBA trade show will be on site with over 385,000 square feet of the latest and greatest in the cattle business to help your operation stay competitive and sustainable. Learn more at convention.ncba.org.
This beef quality assurance tip is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
I'm Steve Boyles, Beef Extension Specialist at Ohio State University. The BQA tip focus at this time is transportation, and we're going to talk about tires. Trailer tires are different than our truck tires. They are designed with a heavier side to handle loads. The thing we have to think about with that, since it's designed to handle loads, we have to help the designer out and maintain the inflation in these trailer tires. You probably want to check that inflation at least more often than we probably do with our truck tires to maintain the integrity of this tire. The other thing we have to take into account is how often we use trailers. Many times with trailers, the side of a tire is going to wear out sooner than the tread. So we need to look at the side and evaluate, look at the cracks, look at the breaks in the side of that tire. You can also look at the age of the tire. There is a 4-digit code on this tire, 3918, which means it was manufactured on the 39th week of 2018. After 6 to 7 years, we need to more critically evaluate the condition of the side of this tire. Let's say we do have a blowout. When you repair or replace the tire that went flat, remember to put it back on the front of the trailer where the trailer manufacturer meant that tire to be. That will increase the ease you have of getting that tire the next time you need it. For more information about this topic and others, you can check out BQA Transportation at the website.
The Beef Quality Assurance Program is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
Did you know you can get reimbursed for attending cattle industry educational events? The Rancher Resilience Grant helps cattle producers attend valuable programs such as Cattlemen's College and Stockmanship and Stewardship training sessions. Local, state, and national events qualify for the grant, and successful applicants can receive money back to help cover registration fees and hotel expenses. To apply for the Rancher Resilience Grant, go to ncba.org and click on the Producer tab.
Welcome back. U.S. corn and beef are both in high demand overseas, which is why exports are an important topic for both industries. We visited the Port of New Orleans, one of the many important stops for corn and beef on that journey overseas. Let's take a look.
Thanks, Kate. Let's get back to our discussion. Kyla, the U.S. is the world's largest exporter of corn. Just how important are exports to the bottom lines of corn growers like yourselves?
They're hugely beneficial for many reasons, not only as a beef producer, but for corn exports as well. So bottom line, there's an estimated, as Tom mentioned earlier, 1 in every 4 bushels is exported, bringing that number to over $5 billion in revenue. And that number is only projected to rise over the next coming years. So they're incredibly beneficial for both sides of our operation, both the beef cattle production as well as the corn growing itself.
And exports are pretty important to the beef industry, aren't they, Don?
Yeah, it may be good for corn, but it's great for beef exports. You know, they contribute $500 per value per every fed animal produced, and that is significant. So just think of you, if you're sitting at home, thinking about that extra $500, how important it is to your bottom line, and that's due to the export market, so incredibly important.
And connect the dots for us, Tom. I mean, beef exports are good for the corn grower, right?
Oh, definitely it is. Just what Don mentioned, if we didn't have beef exports, that means that much less corn being used by the American ranchers. So, I mean, that is what is huge that way. And we all know we can always grow the corn. We just need that livestock industry to finish it off to use that corn that we grow.
You bet. Troy, I have a question for you. We're in times of incredible inflation. People are screaming about food prices. What do you say to the folks who say, why are we exporting corn and beef that we produce here in the United States instead of keeping it all at home for the United States folks? What's your thought?
I would answer that question by saying it's about jobs, it's about efficiency. We create jobs by feeding those cattle and shipping the corn down the port, down the river to the Port of New Orleans and other ports. But on the efficiency on the cattle, we're exporting different cuts of beef that we don't normally consume here in the United States. So we're increasing that value. So when we increase the value of the beef dollar, we increase the value of the corn dollar.
And I would add to that just goes into our farming, ranching story of sustainability. We're able to do more with less and really leave no waste behind. And so just kind of leaving our mark on that sustainable front for both industries.
No doubt, foreign markets are critically important to the profitability of our industry. But before we can capitalize on those foreign markets, we have to have access to those foreign markets. Tell us about some of the work NCBA has done over the years to gain access to those lucrative foreign markets.
And Kevin, you said the key word is access. And when you have the best product in the land, and U.S. corn-fed beef is the best product in the world, access becomes the key. And that's the reason why NCBA dedicates a whole staff at Washington, D.C. to make sure producers are protected. One of those staff members' primary goal is just how can we make sure access to our product is achieved. Over the last couple of years, we had some huge wins for producers. One is we opened China, which is an incredibly large market. The other one is we lowered the tariff requirements on Japan, which is actually another crucial market. So we're kind of got all the chips. We want to make sure everybody understands that U.S. beef is for sale worldwide, and we're going to make sure they have a taste of the best product in the land.
And we are seeing the results of that right now in the market, no doubt. Tom, let's talk about the corn industry. I mean, what all do your folks do to eliminate or reduce barriers to exporting corn globally?
One of the things that with national corn, we know we can't do it by ourselves. That you have to have other companies or other groups work with us. We have Mazol, that it's a group that works from Brazil and Argentina for opening up markets. We also have the U.S. Meat Federation for the helping out with the beef. Another option we have is U.S. grains. So, each country that we deal with overseas has different barriers that we have to try to cross. One individual can't do that by themselves. You need a group effort to get this solved.
And Kyla, as you work on the Market Development Action Team, actually both of you, what all are you doing as you promote trade to also promote animal agriculture?
The Market Development Action Team is really involved in just creating those organic conversations, kind of getting our messaging out and bridging those gaps and just having a conversation about what we do and how we do it. We work with many different organizations to get that rolling and have that access point, that transparency to know what we do and how we do it and how it can be beneficial for you. In terms of organizations, the team as a whole works with local, down to the little towns that you live in. We've just hosted a Red Meat Summit in Nebraska across the world.
So Troy, Kyla talked a lot about teamwork, and I know you all do some interesting work with international buyers. Talk to us about some of the collaborative relationships you have there.
Well, within NCGA, with Market Development Action Team, we bring buyers over for reverse trade missions to get them on our farms, to show them, and our ranches, to show them what we're doing and to explain how we're environmentally friendly, what we're doing to get that product to market. And not only with NCGA, but over with our friends at Poultry, we updated buyer guides to where everybody has a chance worldwide to see what products we have here in the United States.
The team has also hosted recently the UN Food Systems Summit to kind of break down any of those artificial trade barriers that may be in place and kind of share, again, our sustainable production story and let them know what we're doing. We're doing a great job at it, and this is a product that is very desirable, produced sustainably, and to kind of share any misconceptions they may have had along the way.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up the topic of artificial barriers, and Don, I'd be curious to know, what all has NCBA done to address some of the non-tariff trade barriers that can impact our product going into some of these foreign markets?
So we're all about free and fair trade at NCBA, and so what we're trying to do is get the government out from between us and the consumers. When you have the best product in the world, whether it's U.S. corn or U.S. beef, you want the government out of the way and let the consumers make the decision, and we want them to make that decision, and we're confident when you have that best product, they're going to pick us.
Outstanding.
We'll be back to wrap up this special edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen right after this. Stay with us.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. NCBA is the oldest and largest national cattle industry organization working to defend your interests in Washington, D.C. And there are big benefits to being a member. You'll get news you can use in the National Cattlemen, email updates in the NCBA Beef Bulletin, plus big discounts only for NCBA members. Join by calling 866-233-3872 or online at ncba.org.
Have you ever dreamed of owning a brand new John Deere Gator? Well, now's your chance. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association is conducting an online auction for a new Gator. and all proceeds will support their efforts on Capitol Hill on issues that directly impact cattle producers. It's part of John Deere's long-term commitment to the beef industry and NCBA.
We actually have a sponsorship that we've had for many years with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. John Deere is committed to those folks. We're committed to the beef producers. We're committed to make sure that you have the equipment to do the job, perform very well, and we are making sure that we are supporting the NCBA every year.
There will be several gators auctioned off throughout the year, so you'll have many chances to bid. Go to ncba.org and click on the banner with the John Deere Gator, or scan the QR code you see on the screen to place your bid.
This beef quality assurance tip is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
Hi, I'm Steve Boyles from The Ohio State University, Beef Extension Specialist. And my beef quality assurance tip is about bunk management. One of the pillars of beef quality assurance is providing fresh quality feed. One of the ways to do that is through bunk management. Bunk management can improve feed efficiency because we're not going to waste as much feed. There are two things that I normally look at when evaluating a set of cattle and where their intake is. I look at the bunk and I also look at the cattle. Well, let's look at the bunk first. You can use a bunk scoring system. An example would be a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now a 0 is a slick bunk. There's not any feed in there essentially. A 1, there may be sprinkles of feed in that bunk. 2s, 3s, 4s, you can use your own judgment, but there's extra feed in there at the time you are ready to bring more feed to those animals. If you've got 2s, 3s, and 4s, that could be feed that is going to be reduced in quality, especially if it has moisture in it, say some sort of silage in there, and that's going to reduce overall feed efficiency of the pen. So we're going to come back and evaluate if we need to reduce the feed or increase the feed. Normally, if you're going to increase the feed, increase it about 10%. If you're going to decrease the feed, use your own judgment, probably about 10% the opposite way. Admittedly, weather can alter how cattle eat. If a storm comes through, that's going to affect how much they eat, and you may have to make some judgments momentarily for that. But overall, a feed efficiency can be improved through a bunk scoring system. But there's that other factor. We've looked at the bunk. Let's look at the cattle. My general rule is 25, 50, 25. So when that truck comes through, I want to see about 25% of the cattle coming up there. They are ready to eat. 50%, they could be in the middle of the pen, even back of the pen, but they're going to get up. And they saw the truck come through, they're going to start to make their way to come up there and eat some feed. Finally, that 25% that is maybe standing at the back of pen or laying down, they may not come up to the bunk at all. They've just eaten. So you'll have a good estimate on how much those cattle are eating. So once again, when you're evaluating how much feed to provide in a pen, look at the bunk, but also look at the cattle.
The Beef Quality Assurance Program is funded by the Beef Checkoff.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion about the relationship between growing corn and producing beef. I'm joined now by Michael Granche, the Market Development Manager for the National Corn Growers Association. Michael, it's such a pleasure to have you here after all the work that we've done together.
Thanks for having us, Kate.
Talk a little bit about, in your mind, what's significant about the partnership between corn and cattle?
I think what's so significant about the relationship between corn and cattle is it is this ongoing, natural, symbiotic relationship. We can take high-quality, sustainable corn and produce high-quality, sustainable beef, and together we can represent our members, acknowledging that a lot of beef producers are also corn farmers. And so taking that product together, taking it to domestic consumers, but also to our export customers abroad, it's a win-win for everyone.
And why is it such an important story to tell?
It's such an important story to tell because if we're not going to tell it, who will? And we know that we're the experts on this, and so it is so important that we get the story right.
You know, in this show, we've highlighted some of the great work that we've done over the years with you all and telling that story here on the show. Maybe who benefits from the relationship? And maybe, again, why is that so important that we really continue to highlight this partnership?
I think the members we serve ultimately benefit from this relationship. And of course, I think we benefit as staff, we benefit as leadership in these associations, and I think ultimately all of our customers really benefit from this as well. Of course, we're going into a Farm Bill year, and I think all of the work that we've done together and being able to showcase the relationship between NCBA and NCGA, we're working on behalf of farmers. We've got their back, and we're going to get this done together.
You make a great point that it's not only the story that we're telling to consumers of corn and cattle and that grain-fed, high-quality beef, but it's also to the people that, we want to keep our members in business because it's so important that we continue to work together. So we're not done, I know, talking about the relationship and partnership between corn and cattle. What's next? What can we expect in the future?
Sky's the limit, and I think that's the best part about working with our friends here at NCBA. We've covered a lot of ground with you guys, and honestly just want to really say thank you for letting us be a part of your summer business meeting and really just celebrating this milestone that we've got 3 panel shows, awesome panel shows, NAMA recognized panel shows under our belt together, and so I just couldn't be more excited to see where we can take this partnership together.
Yeah, they have been great shows, I think, that we produced. And our viewers, of course, can go back to the YouTube channel on Cattlemen to Cattlemen and see all those episodes, and really highly encourage our folks to do so. Thank you so much for all your work in this effort. The National Corn Growers Association represents nearly 40,000 dues-paying corn farmers nationwide, and the interests of more than 300,000 growers who contribute through corn checkoff programs in their states. To learn more about how they're building future markets for corn, visit the website ncga.com. And don't forget, every day NCBA staff in Washington, D.C. and Denver work to protect the interest of cattle producers all across the country. Join in the fight to protect our way of life by becoming a member. Just call 866-233-3872 or visit the website ncba.org. That wraps up this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again next week right here on RFD TV.